Hey, Geek viewers, Quincy here with Jeremy, and we're here to cover the Batman movie.
We're covering the Batman.
The Batman movie here on the Informal Podcast. Jeremy, what did you think?
I thought it was a breath of fresh air. I don't know. It was a good movie. I had a lot of fun. I liked it a lot, honestly. A lot more than I was than the other reviews were leading me to expect.
Right. Well, and I was reading reviews before watching, and I know that normally I wouldn't do that, but for me, because it was Robert Pattinson and it was a Batman movie, I was like, this could be a throwaway movie. But initial reviews, on my feed for Facebook, everyone said it was bad. And then when you watched it, you said it was good. So
yeah,
I'm a little bit confused, but then I watched it myself and I was like, hey, this is not your typical superhero movie.
This is not a Marvel movie for sure. Yeah.
Definitely not for children, not for K to 12.
Not even that. Just it's a different take on the superhero franchise than what we're used to seeing for the past 10 years.
Right, and that's what I guess kind of indicates that it's being a breath of fresh air for you, right? Something different, something we haven't seen in a while, and I guess the sales numbers proved it.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things that you enjoyed? What were some of the differences that you saw from previous Batman movies?
Well, for one, the characters kind of stood out for me a lot. One of the main questions I had was going into this was whether Robert Pattinson was going to be a good Batman.
Oh yeah.
Or a good Bruce Wayne, right? Well, because I only know him from Twilight. I think most people just know him from Twilight. I know he's in other movies. I know he was other successful movies, other big stars, but I don't think I actually know. I don't think I actually know what they are.
And a bat, and a bat, and a vampire.
Yeah. I only know him because of Twilight series, right? Because that was such a huge thing back in the day.
Well, Christopher Nolan actually said that he was just happy for him to kind of take on the Batman role. He was pleasantly surprised after watching him on a couple movies, and then he felt that he would be a good Batman. And I think even when they announced the casting for the role, I think everyone was a little bit confused.
Wait, Christopher Nolan or Matt Reeves?
Matt Reeves and Christopher Nolan, all of them said that he was going to be a good Batman. Yeah, so a whole bunch of, I guess, directors and fellow actors said that he would be a good Batman. It was just the general public that didn't think that he would be a good Batman.
He was untested, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because especially if he didn't have a track record or a resume that kind of. Well, see, the hard thing is I've never seen any of his other movies that were a little bit more dramatic. Dramatic roles. Mm-hmm. It was I guess Twilight is kind of dramatic, but he was a teen heartthrob, right? Which people who typecast a lot of actors. Same thing with Taylor Lautner, right? It's oh, hey, you're going to be this teen heartthrob, right? Until you become something else. But so how do you feel he fared in his performance?
Like I said, I think he was actually really, really good as Batman. He pulled it off, I would say.
There was an interview that said he actually did one of the scenes 50 times. And I think it was the one with the Commissioner Gordon scene, where of course they were chasing him and everything, and then
that's so vague. I don't.
Oh well, no, it was the one where Commissioner Gordon kind of let him go, and then all the police were chasing him. You remember that scene?
Oh, in the jail cell.
Yeah, in the jail cell.
Okay.
Yeah, in the jail cell. Sorry, it was in the jail cell at the police station. Okay. But they said that they had to film that 50 plus times because Robert Pattinson's the type of actor where he has to be in the mood. To do it. So I don't know how difficult that would be as a director to have to have your actor be in the mood, but they shot it 50 plus times,
Yeah. Or maybe Matt Reeves is just a perfectionist,
That's true too. That's the whole actor and director dynamic, right? That's why some people actually don't work with Michael Cera and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of movie that had instances where, the director would try to reshoot just one scene for an entire day, Yeah.
And then you throw that in. And I do recall even sometimes they'll reshoot a scene the day before and actually re-edit the whole thing even before the final publishing of the movie, like weeks before for some of them. I don't know how that would be a lot of stress for me. I don't think I can handle that.
Yeah, I mean, when you're well, I guess when there's millions on the line.
Yeah. Ooh. And then we actually get to see Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, and then she was cool.
That was good. I actually enjoyed her as Catwoman. I would probably she's like the closest like adaptation of Catwoman to like either the comics or the cartoons themselves than any other iteration. Like, you know, I think a lot of people, at least people who remember Batman's from the 90s, remember Halle Berry as Catwoman.
Yeah.
And
Michelle
then more
Pfeiffer.
Recently, I mean, yeah, if you're that old, Michelle Pfeiffer.
You're that old.
I'm not that old.
Sure.
Michelle Pfeiffer, I think, is probably another fan favorite. And then most recently, it was probably Anne Hathaway as Catwoman in the Christopher Nolan version.
Yeah, she was kind of Anne Hathaway, you know, like she didn't seem like a convincing Batman, but she was kind of like sassy, like a cat. So
Convincing Catwoman.
Yeah. But, you know, I would say same thing with Zoe Kravitz, like Breath of Fresh Air, she kind of embodied, like you said, the real kind of Catwoman that I think people have learned to love, as opposed to the Catwoman fitting the role, or sorry, the actress fitting the role of the Catwoman. Like,
yeah,
it was
well,
more song. Yeah.
I would also say it's a combination of like, you know, the right casting, but also like probably just the right type of story that they wrote for her, like the writers wrote for her. Because like previous ones, she was more or less like a side character, or treated like more like a side character. Right. You know, like she's just there and she's just convenient to kind of move along the plot.
Yeah.
Like that was her main purpose in the other series. But this one, it felt, I mean, yeah, she was there, you know, obviously to help move the plot along, but it also felt like she was more, you know, she was more developed in this, or at least, you know, starting to develop in this film compared to previous ones. Yeah,
they definitely, and I think it's a combination of both her star power and the emphasis that they were the two leading roles for this movie.
Yeah, and they did build up like the chemistry between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. I mean, granted, it was like kind of forced, but I mean, I did appreciate they were trying to kind of build up that romance between the two characters, rather than saying, "Hey, you guys are Batwoman and Catwoman, so go make out or something."
yeah. We want the love story. Force that love story in there, like shoehorn it in there. And I think, you know, like you're talking about the story, and I do feel that this particular like vantage point of, you know, Batman was very different, right? Because it wasn't an origin story. It was also, you know, it was something where like Batman and Catwoman met only like a couple years in his career. Mm-hmm. So even that dynamic was a little bit different, right? You know, like where kind of they're filling everything out, you know, they're kind of a novice. And I think that storyline really helped kind of see a different perspective than most of the times. I mean, normally it's just like an origin story or something along those lines. But I think another interesting character is Commissioner Gordon. You know, it's interesting how, I think everyone kind of does this to subvert expectations, but, you know, change the ethnicity of the characters, you know, like playing around a little bit differently. I mean, aside from the Batman, right? But, you know, Selina Kyle is mostly predominantly white female. And then, of course, Commissioner Gordon is normally an old kind of white male, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like the diversity kind of just like changed things up, like similar to like Nick Fury. I remember when they brought in Nick Fury, I'm like, oh wow, it's Samuel Jackson. Love Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, there's a difference though. It's like the changing it is based on whether there's a difference between changing it based on just because you're trying to be inclusive, or you're just changing it just basically because, you know, just that actor just happened to be that color. But, you know, just fit that role so well. Like in this case, you know, in both cases for Catwoman and Commissioner Gordon, or Police Officer Gordon,
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's not commissioning. No, they both fit the role really well. I mean, at least for that specific setting, right? Matt Reeves' scenario of the Batman investigation night. I think they both fit the role. Like Jeffrey Wright, honestly, he's brilliant. I think he was really brilliant in Westworld, and I'm kind of glad to see him like Batman. Right. But I thought he pulled off like this Commissioner Gordon is more of like a more naive version of it, because he's not like fully aware of like total level of corruption at the beginning, right? Because he's still trying to figure out, where everything stands, while also maintaining a sense of faith into the police department that he's part of, right? Right. Because
that's what he's part of, right? That's the code, right? Like police code, like you training to be like an upholder of justice, and then knowing that.
And at the same time, placing all of his faith into this vigilante who, by all rights, goes counter to his job.
Right. And see, so that's what I find very interesting. Even though Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne had their, dynamic, and it was kind of a forced relationship, I felt Commissioner Gordon and, Bruce Wayne, or the Batman, were almost like, a dynamic duo detective group. You know what I mean? Like they were trying to solve issues together. They fighted each other. They trusted one another, even though, there was that secrethood of identity and, vigilantism, right? Because, he's not the law.
He's not the law. He's not. But I did like the fact that Jim Gordon wasn't sidelined this time. Because I think normally when you think of Commissioner Gordon with the bat signal, he's just there turning on the light and then just letting Batman do his thing.
Yeah.
But in this one, he's like he's more active with the investigation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's going with the Batman to go catch the bad guys or solve riddles. And even going into these dangerous situations, right, with pulling out his gun and everything. Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows. More Commissioner Gordon more as a actual police officer than that guy, old guy that's like turning on the light for the Batman.
I need Batman.
Yeah, it's like the city needs you. Yeah. We need vengeance.
Yeah, and I guess speaking of riddles, right, and solving crimes. Yeah. We also get a glimpse of a different type of Riddler, and I feel he was so different.
Well, this is for me, right? Because I didn't really. For me, the Riddler was always like Jim Carrey in a green spandex suit.
Yeah.
Kind of. I think he was like, he had like question marks like all around his suit, and he had a top hat and like a cane or something. And he was like dancing around, just spouting out random riddles. Yeah. Yeah, like that was my imagery of what the Riddler was.
They took this one was on this too. Completely.
Yeah, like they gave him more of an ominous feeling. They gave him an actual mask. I remember when the trailer first dropped for the Batman, and they kind of teased that the villain. A lot of people thought it was like someone else called Hush, but it was a serial killer. But it turned out to be the Riddler.
Yeah,
but it was the fact that the mask itself was like, out of like duct tape, right? That was unique.
Right. Yeah, and it made it a little bit more scary, a little bit more ominous, and the fact that he was just always ever present, right? He came off as a really smart individual, kind of knew like the landscape of Gotham, and was almost there the whole time,
Sure, and also his motives too were a little bit hidden, right? Because I remember like when I was watching the movie, one of the things that was running through my mind was like, what is like the Riddler's motive in this? And actually, even before watching it, I was Googling things like, what is the Riddler's purpose in the Batman? because you think, because like one of the things that I remember from Christopher Nolan's Batman, right, especially with Heath Ledger as the Joker, one of the big things that stood out as to why the Joker was doing what he was doing was because his purpose was to show the world that the Batman was nothing more than a man that could be corrupted, right? He wanted to tear that symbol down of that anyone could be the Batman and stand up to justice. And that was like very apparent to me in the Batman. And so I was thinking, well, are they going to do something similar in this version of the Batman with the Riddler? So I was like kind of trying to Google like what his whole deal was, looking through different Wikipedia pages and also looking at different YouTube videos, like, to see like who's the Riddler. And most of the time it would just say things like, oh, he was like a supervillain that like to challenge the Batman because to prove his superior intellect, right, or something like that. But in this, I mean, obviously it turned out to be very different, right? It was more of like he saw himself as like a partner in crime with the Batman to cleanse like the city of corruption.
Right. And I think that also brings us, and we'll discuss it a little bit later, like the morality of what's good and bad. Like, are people who are vigilantes, they're doing well for the city, or, are they making things worse? From what I know from a lot of the interviews is for the Riddler, they had mentioned, especially they were asking the director, like, what was the inspiration? They said that they had based a lot of it off the Zodiac killer. And like all the kind of the cut up words that they put on like telegrams and sending in riddles and things like that. They had based a lot of that off of that, and then how they like how he kind of had the persona of like a serial killer, but at the same time, like you said, his motives were a little bit different. Yeah,
his motives were very, very very specific, but it just really wasn't really revealed until the end.
And then, so I guess, with all of that, I mean, I feel like those were kind of the main characters that stood out. Was there any other characters that you felt?
I mean, there were some other ones that probably were not as fleshed out as I hoped to be. I mean, I get it because like there's only so much you can do, but there was also, the Penguin, right, played by Colin Farrell. Yeah, I mean, like I was thinking he was going to be more of the main villain in the story.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of like teasing him the entire time, like, oh, the Colin Farrell, the Penguin, and like there were all these interviews that popped up, before the movie release, saying like, oh yeah, people couldn't recognize him as the Penguin when he tried to walk in on set. Even security at one point stopped them because they didn't recognize him as the actor.
Yeah.
They just thought he was they just thought he was like some random old guy or creepy guy trying to get on set or something like that.
Yeah, and that's why I feel in this movie there was a lot of subverted expectations. Like, of course, the casting for all these individuals that you don't expect.
The misdirection was real. These teasers.
Yeah, but maybe some actors just need a chance, right, to prove themselves.
Right.
Like you have comedic actors. I mean, even like someone like Chris Pratt, right, who's doing Star-Lord. Like he still brought the humor to it, but now he's like an action hero.
He's an action comedy hero. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think things like that are like all across the board, breaths of fresh air, right? Different type of hero movie, different type of characters, things that you originally thought, of these characters are no longer the same mold that they were built in. All of that was like really great, for me.
Yeah, and I also do want to point out, probably the other thing was Andy Serkis as Alfred, Pennyworth.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I think it's really funny. I find it really, really funny that Andy Serkis played a really good Alfred, considering like most people know him from either as Gollum in the Lord of the Rings,
right,
or as that villain guy in the Marvel's universe.
Which one is he?
He's the one that sold the vibranium to Ultron.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Actually, that was in Black Panther.
Yeah, he was in Black Panther. Yeah. Oh, he was also in Age of Ultron as well.
Oh, wow. What's actually funny, too, is the fact that, Jeffrey Wright is actually the voice of the Watcher for What If. So I wonder if, people are hearing, these characters and just like, oh, you see Twilight, you see the Watcher.
Jeffrey Wright is like the new voice of God.
Yeah, I know. I observe everything. So
I thought it was really funny that he was good. He was a good Batman. I mean, Alfred. Like I thought Michael Caine was going to be like the de facto standard for Alfred, but Andy Serkis brought his own take to it. So Now I don't know. Now I'm confused.
And then, so now that I think we covered most of the characters, why don't we dive a little bit into the story? We mentioned it a little bit before that this is kind of like a year or two into the whole Batman history. He's kind of filling it out. And then, of course, Gotham in itself has a lot of crime, a lot of corruption, I guess the character that we didn't really talk about is kind of the main mob lord.
Carmen Falcone.
Yeah, Carmen Falcone, right? So he, of course, played a pivotal part. I mean, he didn't seem like he was the big bad, or he wasn't the big bad, but he was the bad, that kind of drove a lot of the story, and also fueled a lot of the corruption, right? That's why the Riddler kind of put some of the people on blast because of their misdeeds and corruption. So what do you think about like Marcone? I know that you have some history with him in knowing like his origin story and what he's been doing.
Well, you never really watched like the Gotham TV series, right?
So I watched a little bit of it.
I don't know why I keep putting the in front of everything.
Yeah, everything now. the Batman, the Twilight series, the Watcher.
Yeah, Gotham.
Yeah, Gotham. I feel like that story. I have only watched bits and clips of it. But Bruce is like a kid. In that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Gotham series. I mean, not the Gotham. Gotham was more focused really on the setup of the city itself. Where the city of Gotham, where it kind of follows a story of a young, really really young police officer Gordon, right? Who's has like these great ambitions. Starting off, he's gonna change the city. He's gonna catch all these criminals, but then as the story progresses, he finds himself embroiled in all of these conspiracies and but he's involved in a lot of different types of crime involuntarily, and he has to he has to decide like how to balance all of that while maintaining his sense of honor.
Yeah.
So it was not necessarily a Batman story, but it was more of like a setup to lead to the beginning of Batman. So it had like a lot of elements that you kind of see in the Batman movie, where, for example, it starts off like how all Batman stories start off with the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents, right? Thomas and Martha Wayne. And like everyone's perception of that is like it's just a random mugging that happened in the middle of the street. They died because someone wanted quick cash. But as the season progresses, you kind of learn out more that the parents were actually there was a specific reason as to why they were murdered, and that there's whole conspiracy as to because the Waynes were actually an interference in certain things, and they were killed in order to make so that the crime lords, especially things like the Maroni family and the Falcone family, to make more money or to take control of Gotham, right?
And that makes it actually feel a little bit more real. I think, the beginning of the Batman, the Robert Pattinson version, we do see, the murder of the parents, and you think that it's an origin story only to find out that it's an older Batman. But then you realize that there is this intricate web of corruption and crime and,
Yeah, and the Batman, this one, they definitely make, they definitely embroil they embed the father and mother of Batman into like this conspiracy that kind of leads up to the main story overall.
Yeah. And so, and I think that's where, the whole premise behind this movie, The Batman, is like, who's good, who's bad? Is, like superheroes, like people in capes, are those the heroes? Are they doing good for the city? Or is it, like these other supervillains, I guess, like the Riddler, who are, trying to take also justice into their own hands, and obviously there are two different characters with two different motivations, but essentially, are they doing the same thing, right? And then, of course, you got Commissioner Gordon, who's completely in the dark, who's doing his job, and then trying to kind of, make sense of it all. And then, of course, working with Batman. I think the dynamic and the relationships throughout the movie were all very interesting. And then even Catwoman, who is, supposedly like an anti-hero, or, what do you feel like it's because of her love for, or her likeness to Batman, that she wanted to help him out? Or do you feel like there was other reasons for her being involved?
Well, that was part of what I was saying, where I think like their love story was kind of forced, because it doesn't really give you a motive, it doesn't really give you like I guess scenarios as to why she starts falling for Batman. You could speculate it was probably because things like, he was the first one to actually kind of care what happens to her, because she's grew up in a tough neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Being the daughter of a single mother, and the father being the actual crime lord. Right.
Yeah, that was great.
So her childhood was stuck in a rock and a hard place. So obviously she didn't have a great time. So you could say, like, maybe it was the first time that something cared for her, or maybe it was just the fact that, like all of that heroism kind of just drew.
Ooh, just juicy with the pheromones there.
Yeah, like it's the heroism.
Yeah. Well, and see, so the funny thing is, as you explained that, I feel like this movie actually had a lot of strong characters. Mm-hmm. Even though we are familiar with the characters themselves, they, painted them in a different light where you could actually fall in love with the characters again. And then I think having gone through all of that, because Bruce Wayne's father, right, was running for office. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they have that kind of entire flood during the election day. And, that was kind of the Riddler's final hurrah, leading all up to that. Do you feel like the Riddler in himself came off as a bad guy?
Yeah, he was 100% the bad guy.
Do you feel like, because I feel like even when he was doing some of his things, he was doing it out of like trying to prevent like corruption, right? Like he knows that this corruption is going on, that he wanted to, kind of stop that. And of course, Batman was always kind of trying to save these people who are not necessarily the good guys.
Yeah, he's still the bad guy.
Okay.
I don't know what the debate is. He's still killing people.
Well,
it doesn't matter like who it is. You're still killing people,
right? I like the means of how he's going about it. Of course, is very good. But the end result, right, is to kind of also stop all the things that are happening in the background that people don't know about, right?
No, it's still bad.
Okay. No matter what,
because he doesn't have the power to stop crime.
Well, so what is your thoughts on someone like Batman then?
Yeah, so that's I'm glad you asked. Okay, no, so that's like probably the biggest question in the Batman is like, is the Batman necessary in a place like Gotham, or is the Batman even necessary in general? Because for one, like he thought he would make a difference, but even he himself, Bruce Wayne was like, even he himself was questioning his impact on the city since he took up the mantle of the Batman, right? And obviously we find out later on that he's actually had a negative effect on the city, because one, we find out we see early on that the citizens are scared of him, right? Two, villains are starting to catch on and thinking like, okay, well, if this guy can go out into the night and
do whatever he wants,
right? Then why can't I, right? Why can't I do the same thing to catch criminals or even kill criminals? Yeah. In that scene on the scaffold where they asked the thug of the Riddler, right? Who are you? He responds with, I am vengeance. It kind of resonates with, or it kind of shakes the Bruce Wayne into rethinking his whole life mission.
Right.
Yeah. Because that's his phrase. Like he says he's vengeance, but if he's vengeance and he's saying it's vengeance, and who's then that means that they're both wrong in that sense.
Right. Yeah. It kind of brought to light, of course, for him innately, he's trying to do it for the good of Gotham, right?
This is why I'm saying like this is probably not like a typical Batman, because it's slightly diving into the theme of like, is being a vigilante good, right, for the city? ultimately the answer is no, primarily because one, it's illegal, and two, you don't have the authority to act on your own, right?
Yeah.
That's why you have police officers. You have police institutions to help maintain law and order.
Law.
Because they're empowered by people that we elect to do their job, right? So people like the Batman and the Riddler, right? Obviously, they have very different approaches as to dealing with criminals, but in the end, right, they are still taking matters into their own hands.
Right. Yeah, and above the law, right? Like,
they're going above the law, right? As if it doesn't apply to them to do their own thing. So that's why that's why I think like this Batman doesn't necessarily fit into that superhero genre, and it probably wouldn't even fit into like a DC Justice League kind of thing.
Hoorah rah! Like everyone together.
Yeah.
And then after that, kind of the story. Concludes, the Riddler's in jail. Selena Kyle, decides to, kind of go to another city. But then, of course, she loves Batman. So she ends up staying, which was, I don't know if that was weird for you. But I guess,
What was weird?
Because originally, wasn't she deciding to go to the next city over instead of staying in Gotham?
She goes her own separate way.
Oh, I thought she ended up staying because of Batman.
No, they split up. They do like that weird Fast and Furious thing where they go in opposite directions. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mommy, you're gonna have to edit that out. And then of course we also see glimpses and highlights of the Penguin, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he wasn't kind of like a major player, I think they're setting up for something in the future. And then also we see glimpses of the Joker as well.
Yeah, so funny thing about that. So actually, I think maybe a couple days ago, there was an interview with Matt Reeves saying he's not even sure if the Riddler's going to make it into the sequel.
Oh.
Yeah, they were just teasing him because he's that version of the Joker.
The Riddler or the Joker?
No, the Joker that we see in the jail cell. That was like an early concept of what they're playing with in terms of the Joker. But they don't have a solid idea of what he's going to look like yet.
Did they say anything about it potentially being a trilogy? I feel like it's feeling very trilogy.
I have no clue, right? Just until a few days ago, we weren't even sure if there was going to even be a sequel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because like at the end,
I'm pretty sure with the box office numbers, sequel coming soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like they're currently at 500 million right now.
Okay,
so
that's great.
I wonder if it's gonna actually beat Spider-Man No Way Home. Because
I hope so.
It's moving a lot faster than that actual.
I hope so.
I don't know why you didn't like it. It's the best movie of all time. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Overall positive remarks. I think a lot of people thought this was a good movie. Some people liked it more than others. But all in all,
it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, right?
Yeah. So I guess with all of that said, like on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this movie?
I would give this a solid 8.
Okay. No, a solid 8s are 8s, For me, I'd probably give it like around a 7. I'm not into like very like dark movies naturally. I do like the whole like cut in with like humor, where it's like, you're having a very tense moment, and then all of a sudden it's like, here's something humorous that breaks the tension.
Yeah, I just liked it a lot more, probably because of the fact that it doesn't follow like the typical Batman formula, where it's like he's just fighting crime the entire time. It's more like he was just like he's investigating.
Yeah. It did feel more like an investigation type of movie.
Yeah, it was like a film noir type of film, right? With the voiceover monologue.
Yeah.
And the journal, and also just like the overall playing with the lighting on their faces.
Yeah. That was good. The cinematography of that was good.
Yeah, that was
noir.
Yeah, and then just like the soundtrack. Oh man, it brought fear. it brought goosebumps, especially like that. I think my favorite scene probably of all time was like the one where he's chasing the Penguin, right? And he's like, the car just starts up out of the like in the dark.
Right, and then fires up.
Well, you can hear like the engine roaring, and it sounds like a freaking like jet engine.
Yeah, even actually that was pretty neat. Like the Batmobile, like seemed like a muscle car. It was very different than your typical.
It wasn't an armored tank for sure.
Yeah, armored tank. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. You know, check out the Batman. You know, Jeremy gives it an 8, so it must be good.
It will be. It is good.
But that's me and Jeremy here on the Informal Podcast, and we'll see you next time.